We're doing it. We're doing it live. It's 11 Personnel presented by our good friends at Monticello Bank. I'm Nick Roush. He's Adam Luckett, and we're here to talk a little Kentucky football. Mr. Luckett, this might be, of all of the shows we do this year, this might be the one that it's the least Kentucky football time of the year. I think most people want to know, is Adam Luckett going to boo John Calipari? That's what we got to know. Everybody's got an opinion. I need Adam Luckett's opinion.
My only opinion is, of course, Rick Pitino makes this about Rick Pitino. We couldn't get through our own Kentucky John Calipari kind of a moving on moment. We distance ourselves from each other. Closure. We couldn't get our own closure without Rick butting into the conversation. So that's my opinion. Like, can we just have this moment to ourselves? Do we really need Pitino jumping in the middle of this? That was the most Pitino thing ever. I think he got too much mileage out of the Pope statement the first time. So now he's double dipping in the waters. We didn't need Pitino's advice on what to do here.
I didn't need his advice. I would like to hear him more about how terrible he felt when he got his ass kicked by 20 points. That I enjoyed that because he does have unique perspective in that regard. But it was the most. It had no caption on it. I was like, well, I was on the air at the time, and I was like, Rick's definitely talking about Cal right now. At least he noted, we're not the best of friends, which I enjoyed that too. It's weird. There's a lot of feelings going on, a lot happening. I'm trying to. So this is going to.
Before we move on.
Yeah.
I'm almost willing to bet that there will be a Kentucky fan at that North Carolina Duke college game day with a sign that said, "I came all this way to boo Seth Greenberg." I have a hunch in me that someone is going to show up. And that is my hot take for the weekend. I think that's going to happen.
If you're that fan, please, by all means, we'd love to have you on the show to talk about it. I'd have a good time with it all. It'd be great. We're going to talk football, but this basketball game this weekend, in my mind, I'm thinking of like the most anticipated games of my lifetime. I think of the Anthony Davis year when it was North Carolina, Kentucky were 1-2 in the preseason. That was a big game. The first Louisville game between Cal and Rick. The Florida game back in 2003 when they were the number one team in the country, and then Rick's return. Those are some of the biggest. I don't know if I'm missing any there.
Are you just doing regular season? Because
regular season at Rupp.
The Final Four is the biggest one when they played. Yeah. You had the week to build up to it, but Rupp home games. Yeah, I think that's kind of what
those are the big ones. Yeah,
and then I think the game day in 2010. When Tennessee came to town, that was a big week because I remember being in college. That was a big deal. Mm-hmm. Sold out game day. Tennessee, it was a big game. So that I would put that one in there.
Pearl would have been there. Yeah. I was there for the barbecue game when Cal lectured the student section because somebody dressed up like a cook and was gonna, hey Bruce, want a barbecue? Like that. It was right after that in like 2011 or 12. But which makes me think, how many games of this magnitude have we witnessed for Kentucky football in our lifetimes?
When you talk about it's different. But you talk about hype. I think the 2021 Florida game was up there. You could go back and watch 11 Personnel podcasts. We talked about it. Like, I think the fan base wanted Dan Mullen's head on a stick for that game. They wanted that Florida win at home. They were starving for it. The Georgia
SEC championship East, 2018.
That one was a little different though because there wasn't like this big aggression and hunger for it. I think more people were just like, is this real?
We were kind of dumbfounded that it was actually happening.
I think a lot of people were just like, I really do like when you go back and live that way. I think a lot of people were just shell shocked that was happening.
Especially in the fact that the Missouri game ended the way it did.
And it never happened again, but I think if it had happened again, I think Kentucky fans would have been more prepared and that would have been a more maybe raucous environment. This was my season ticket days, so I could say I don't think it was the best environment for that game.
And especially when Swift made that cut and put Mike Edwards on skates, you just kind of were like, oh, they're
Even
different level.
even before that, I don't think there was the ferociousness and the anxiety and the hunger and the like willingness to like make that place like absolutely like a dragon's pit. Where I think because I don't think the fan base was really ready for all that. Where I think they were more ready for it the next couple years. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. An underrated one is the Thursday night Auburn game because
that's a good one. Yes,
that's early in the Stoops tenure, and the South Carolina game for as much fanfare that came with the victory. It was pretty sparse in the corners, right? Like it wasn't a full stadium for that game back in 14. Was Auburn Thursday night 14 or 15?
15.
And that was the kind of like, all right, if you win this game, you're probably going to go to a bowl game. And hell, that's the only Thursday night game ever in Lexington, if I'm not mistaken. So there was a lot of juice for that one.
The biggest games in the last 20 years were, as far as lead up goes, would have been, I think, 2007 Florida game day.
Oh yeah,
that's number one to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think number two is Georgia, SEC East. Because both those games, Kentucky, like you were legitimately playing for a playoff spot later in the year. So those are the top two. And then I think after that, you have a second tier of kind of like big games. Maybe Kentucky got to a hot start like Florida in 21, like Auburn in 15. And I think you could probably go back 2010.
Here's a fun one.
They had a cooking at certain points.
The Mississippi State game when they came in with Dak. They were the number one team in the country. And Kentucky wasn't. You thought they had a shot, and they kind of went back and forth with them for a while. They could never keep it within one score.
Yeah, I think that would be probably in that mix. And there's probably some other ones in the Brooks era, like 07 Tennessee was felt like people were excited for that one. 09 Tennessee, people were really excited for that one.
07 Tennessee just still irritates me. But you mentioned in too the South Carolina game in 2010. That was September, if I'm not mistaken. Like it was. I think
it was like first Saturday in October.
Yeah, it was warm. The juices were flowing that day, Mr. Luckett. That was that was good. It was a good day.
So I think in the last 20 years, Kentucky's had two probably Tier A games. I would say the LSU game is close, but that game lost some luster because Kentucky lost to South Carolina. It was kind of a surprise that Kentucky beat them. Well, so that one's close. And then I think you have a bunch in the tier right there that we've had happen a few times.
You want to talk about snake pit feelings? When LSU was kind of beaten and battered and Coach O came in, that was a like, let's rip their heads off. And then they just did.
Yeah. See, I would put that in the tier 2 because that was a big game. But that game didn't feel as big as the week before because I think there was a lot of relief that Kentucky finally beat Florida at home.
Yeah. No doubt about it. The Orange Ninja, he's just bringing up the 18 game against Penn State because that wasn't at home, but there was a sense of, oh gosh, we made it this far. Let's not stop here.
Validation for the season was what that game was about.
Yeah, because a lot of it you felt like you didn't get the credit you deserved because you blew that game at Tennessee and you didn't hit that 10-win mark. And there was also the records on the line. There was a lot at stake in that game. So, fun way to kind of segue our college basketball weekend with Kentucky football, which is going to be a big recruiting weekend for the Cats. We're going to talk about that and much more. But first, I need to tell you about our good friends at Monticello Bank, where you can enjoy the home court advantage and try out their HELOC special. Use the equity in your home to finance special home projects and improvements. Score big with fantastic introductory rates and attractive closing costs. So you need that deck, like Luckett. I think the Lucketts need a big deck on the backyard. I know you got the walkout, but like that is the ultimate setup, right? If you have the big deck on the back, so then when you have the walkout basement, you put a little patio underneath it, right?
It's not. I mean, you're talking my wife's language. I mean, it's on my wife's list of things to get done. So It won't be long. But I think the basement is what we're working on first to finish, and then we're probably going to pivot to deck.
Well, if you got a basement to finish, use the equity that you built in your home. Check out the HELOC special with Monticello Bank. They've got 20 locations in 14 counties across Kentucky, just around the corner. So hurry in and speak to one of our mortgage lenders today. Monticello Bank, proud presenting sponsors of 11 Personnel, member FDIC, equal housing lender, Monticello Bank. It's where people matter. Does your wife, does she do the HGTV shows too, like it?
Not frequently, but she will watch them randomly.
What's the TV that, because that's my house. Like if she's putting on something that I'm not interested in, like I can kind of satellite in. I'm like, what's the kind of trash TV for your wife at that you're
any Hitler documentary.
She's on the Hitler documentaries?
Yeah.
Oh, well, dude, that's awesome.
Well, there was one about, it was like Hitler in Argentina, and it was this guy just running around and like walking down creeks. Like Hitler could have walked down this creek. And I thought it was like the most ridiculous show I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, that's not my language. I'm more of the like classic History Channel, like old guys getting interviewed and then they're recreating scenes. I was worried you might say something like the Housewives are the ones that I'm really glad that we don't.
Oh, she's into the Housewives too. She did that. She was very big on the Vanderpump when all the cheating stuff was going on. So she got very into Vanderpump there that was about a year ago.
Is Vanderpump, is that like a product, or like are they, is it there's a business?
There's an old lady named Vanderpump, and she owns like this restaurant in LA.
Okay.
And that all these kind of aspiring, I would say, models and actors and actresses work at.
Oh.
So it's all these young people in LA working at this restaurant.
A bunch of good-looking young people in the service industry were hooking up with each other? No way. I cannot believe that. In the service industry? Let me guess, there were drugs too.
Yeah, but essentially the rich lady, she was like, these people I have working for me are crazy. You should do a TV show on them. And so that's what they did. And it's been the same cast of characters for like 11 years. Like the show's been going on for like 11, 12 years. So it was 20 somethings. Now they're all like, they're in like their mid 30s, but still doing the same debauchery.
Grow up.
Haven't grown up at all.
Grow the hell up.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So that was on the Luckett House for a while. Vanderpump Rules.
Well, when you're watching the Kentucky-Arkansas game on Saturday, you're going to see some recruits in the stands. We're going to tell you about some of the big-time recruits that Kentucky's starting. Because here's the thing, Lucky. I know, especially right now, the portal's king. When you're on kind of, especially where Kentucky is as a program. But they're out and about recruiting. We've seen Mark Stoops even out on the trail. All the assistants are out on the trail. So we're going to give you some names to monitor. But the biggest one, I think the most notable one right now, who is visiting this weekend, is Carson Baker, who's a blue chip running back from Georgia. That Boulware, I think he got him on campus a year ago, and he's been recruiting him for a while. Like this isn't just some sort of one-off. But you'll never believe this, like it. He's really starting to blow up. So he'll be on campus this weekend. Kentucky's gotten, Chris Rodriguez. That was a good get out of Georgia. Chris Rodriguez was not being recruited by Georgia. This guy is. But at least Kentucky, they're getting him on campus for one of their what feels like 2 junior days to kick off this 2026 recruiting cycle.
Yeah, Carson Baker, Nick, Metro Atlanta, 4-star recruit. Top 250 player, ran for 1,300 yards as a junior. So, of course, he's going to have just about every school in this region interested in him. And Kentucky's among them. He's visited Georgia. He's visited South Carolina, unofficial. Now he'll get to Kentucky for what is kind of be their unofficial, I would say, junior day this weekend. And so we'll see if they can make a push. Really, this is about can you build the relationship enough to get an OV in June. That's really what you're trying to do. Just stay alive and see if you can make a push here. And so Kentucky's got a relationship established with him. They're working on building that. But again, this is going to be a big boy recruitment here. All signs point to for the tailback. And KSR Plus, we'll have a rundown on Friday about just kind of where everything is and where we're going moving forward. But this is This is one of the, I would say, one of the bigger names that will probably be on campus this weekend.
The other big name that we know of was on campus for the Alabama game, which before we get into that, they're kind of getting lucky that the two Saturdays during this open recruiting period that they have home games, it's Alabama. Granted, nooner, not the most ideal for traveling, but top 5 game, and then you got Cal coming in for the first time.
Yeah.
What I wonder what the ticket like. Do you get the standard ticket allotment, or are they fighting? Is Mark Pope and Mark Stoops like, pulling on playing a game of tug of war for tickets? Like I'm fascinated by how just they give those out to the recruits and their families and stuff like that for games like this.
There's standing room only sections, places like that.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
they probably
Find
a way to make it work.
And they have the little sections underneath Rupp. Have you been to one of those before?
No,
I got down there for
pictures.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like a bar, like here we got a nice bar downstairs for you. So I'm assuming that's some of the part of the standing room only type deal.
Yeah, so they'll find a way to get them in, but of course, this is the one you would want to have a big recruiting weekend. Like if you were gonna do like a big junior day type deal in January, the city's gonna be buzzing all day Saturday. Downtown's gonna be crazy. This would be when you will want to host prospects on your campus because it's gonna be a pretty electric day.
Yeah,
in the Bluegrass in Central Kentucky, there in Lexington.
The other big name in 2026 is the biggest name in the state of Kentucky, Jarvis Strickland, a Paducah Tillman offensive tackle. And you noted on KS Board, which you can try it out now. Use promo code UK1. You'll get 2 months of access. So that'll get you through March Madness. If you're not on there, go ahead and get on there now. You can check out a lot more detailed football reporting too for Mr. Luckett. You pointed out there that Stoops, they're pulling out the Martellus Carter playbook for Jarvis Strickland, another Tennessee transplant. But Stoops, he doesn't get out a ton, much to the chagrin of some of our fans over there on KS Board. But that's back-to-back years where he's been at Paducah Tillman in January, February, visiting these kids in person. And it's a return trip because Strickland, he was here for the Alabama game. So kind of nice to have a top 300 offensive tackle in the state. And it looks like Kentucky's just like, we're not messing around. We got to get this guy.
Yeah, one could say full court press here for Jarvis Strickland. Again, same kind of Martellus Carter. Chattanooga goes to Tillman. Now they're trying to get him from Tillman to Kentucky. And they're giving him the early treatment that you saw them give Martellus Carter. And that worked out, ended with a May commitment. I think that's probably the plan here. Try to wrap him up before June even gets here so you have him in the fold when those big OVs start. So he's a guy to monitor closely here. Again, looking like a tier 1A tackle target for Kentucky in this class.
Elsewhere, I'm not sure what specific players you want to touch on next, and we don't want to inundate people with it, but it does feel like that. I guess maybe Guthrie, the offensive lineman from Ohio. That might be a tall task. But Wolford and Vince, you've seen a lot of pictures of those guys with players in the state of Ohio over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, Guthrie's going to be tough. Top 150 prospect. He's probably going to Ohio State. So that one's going to be tough. Two, I want people to know of at tackle. One, just in general on the offensive line, they're really spraying the board, and you're seeing a lot of targets emerge, which is typically a good sign. Travis Robertson is from Detroit. He's supposed to be on campus this weekend. NC State is kind of the other power conference school really involved early with him. Pete Eglidis, which is, I believe, how you pronounce it, Nick. He's unranked. He's from Columbus, Ohio. Ohio State's not really in this yet, but you're seeing him get a lot of power conference interest. He is supposed to be on campus, I believe, this weekend. So he's a name I think to watch. Is a guy who could end up being your next best target there, or top target after Strickland. So he's a name I would get familiar with. Pete Eglidis out of Columbus, Ohio. Bishop Watterson. And then edge is another position they're really starting to hammer. You're seeing a lot of prospects emerge. They're taking some swings on some big guys. Mm-hmm. Trenton Henderson is a top 50 player out of Pensacola, Catholic in Florida. Anwar Stewart's from Pensacola. You're seeing Anwar Stewart more on the trail, like a lot more than I've seen him in the past.
Yep.
Just popping up at places. And then Karsten Bush at my old alma mater, St. X. Kentucky's seen him twice now in town. Stoops, Brad White, and I believe Mike Stoops did an in-home visit at the high school. So I'm all locker room. I could smell it through my computer.
Yeah.
And then this week, Mike Stoops did an in-home with him. So he is a name, I think, to watch here. Louisville's also recruiting him pretty hard, so that could end up being kind of a in-state battle there for that Carson Bush linebacker at St. X.
Is he a 26er?
Yeah.
Okay. I know there's the kids at Trinity are 27, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those guys are
St. X has two. They have two 26 kids. Him and Marlon Harbin.
Yeah.
Now with Harbin, I think it's a size thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Little guy.
He might be a guy that has to really go camp and work out because you haven't seen a lot of buzz with him yet. I know On3's pretty high on him. They have him ranked some, but I think size is probably might be the issue there. I haven't really gotten a lot of information or intel on him yet as far as the recruiting process goes.
It's just getting started for a lot of these underclassmen. We'll have more on who's expected to be in Lexington for the highly anticipated game between Kentucky and Arkansas. Not just big day for Cal, but also big day for his old colleague, Mark Stoops, laying the floor for the upcoming recruiting class, setting the table, if you will. That's probably better than laying the floor. Laying the floor, what? A lot more difficult. You ever laid floor before, Luckett? Have you ever done any tile work?
No.
Yeah, it's we've done and when I say we, I mean my wife. She's done the kind of pop-in vinyl, which I'm just barely assisting. She's making all the cuts. The real vinyl stuff, that's a little bit more challenging, especially because those tiles, they can be real fragile. It's not fun. Setting the table, much easier. I do want to set the table with a little bit of fun, just kind of evergreen topics. But first, I do need to tell you about our friends at Prize Picks, the best daily fantasy sports app out there. So whether you want to get a little action on the NBA, college hoops, obviously you're going to have a little bit of action on the Super Bowl coming up next week. Prize Picks is the place to do it, your one-stop shop for all your daily fantasy sports needs. Go on over to prizepicks.com and see the squares. You see the number, you go more or less, you string a few together, and you can win big with Prize Picks, especially when you put in promo code KSR. You play $5 in lineups, you're going to get $50 in Prize Picks dollars added directly to your account. I love that they got college basketball squares out there for big games like Saturday, which Saturday's college hoop slate is pretty awesome from noon to when the Kentucky game ends at 11. Like that.
I mean, if you got Gonzaga St. Mary's late will be a good game too. So.
I mean, it's going to be awesome. So make sure you've got Prize Picks, and make sure you put in promo code KSR. You play $5, you're going to get 50 in Prize Picks bucks added to your account. Terms apply. PrizePicks.com. Download the Prize Picks app today. Lucky, before we get into a little bit of fun shenanigan nonsense stuff, you went through the tedious task of giving one thought on every single player on the depth chart. That's a lot of thoughts, Luckett. Are you sure you got that many thoughts up there?
Yeah, well, the main purpose of that exercise, I'm going to revisit again before the season starts. But the main purpose was to be like, hey, they got all these new players, but they still have all these returning players. Guys that are going to play important roles on the team. So let's hey, remember this guy? This guy's going to do this and that. And so that was the real purpose of it, just to see and to remind yourself where these players are in their kind of development plan and what checkpoints they probably need to hit this year to be productive players on the team or to help the team reach their goals.
You talked about it quite a bit with the class of I forget which recruiting classes, but basically
24, yeah.
But the guys that were supposed to be your junior seniors coming up, they filled up most of the two deep. They're gone now. You had 20 portals departures out. You bring in 25 guys. The remaining guys, how far have they come along? We were kind of high on some of them as recruits. Two in particular in the secondary that I'm you're expecting a little bit of a bump. For me, one of them is Quashid Scott, just because
Yeah.
he was such a nice recruiting win, and he feels like a guy that could play a lot in that nickel medium package, just with his size, and he showed a lot of tenacity on tape, low on his shoulders. And then the other one's Nasir Addison, because there was a lot of raw just athleticism there. So you like the traits. Have you done anything with him over the last 2 years?
Yeah, a couple things stood out to me. I think Quashid Scott's not up there. What position does he play? Like I think it's fair to assume he's going to have at least a rotation spot on defense. But what position is it at? Can DJ Waller do the JQ Hardaway? Can he have the JQ Hardaway second year bump? I think you would feel good about your cornerback situation if he does. But heck, he might not even beat out Tyron Nichols.
Yeah.
Who I kind of like. It's easy to forget about because he didn't play the last few games of the season.
No, but I'm almost expecting him to be the Maxwell Harrison heir apparent.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you could definitely see that. At linebacker we've talked about, they've got to find like that third and fourth guy with all these young players. What are they doing at like Sam and nickel? It's a big question for me. It seems like that almost changes every year what they want to do. So what is the plan this year?
Yeah.
Defensive
Alex Safari was I enjoyed that line. Huh.
Yeah.
What's he going to play? Great question.
Yeah. And then defensive line, to me, like Gerard Smith is a guy I'm watching closely. Yeah. Like I think they need him to. I don't think they need him to start, but I think they need him to be like their fourth or fifth best defensive line player. And if he's that, I think they're in pretty good shape. And then offensively, I talked about like whether they come out and say it or not, they invested in Jamarian Wilcox this offseason by both their portal activity and I think keeping him on the roster. And so they're going to need him to deliver this year. And then, but you just see, like when you go through the offense, you just see how some of these position groups, Nick, have just been eviscerated with players leaving the program. They just don't have much what some would call roster balance. They're just not a lot of returning guys in a lot of spots. And then there's some old linemen. You're just like, oh yeah, that guy, oh that guy. And so like Anthony Crease is a guy a lot of people forget about, but that was a tackle they brought in for him to probably compete for playing time this year. So where is he? Where is he at right now?
Mark Nave, that's a name that I did forget about. Yeah, he's a late ad. Yeah.
Right. I think he might still be another year away after another development year. But like, what do they like? The fascinating thing about this is what do they do at kind of like this guard spot? This one spot that's up for grabs with Jalen Farmer, Jagger Burton, and maybe even Wallace Unamba. Because the thing to keep in mind, you can do the double dip. Louisville lost a couple linemen last year. They lost one guy to UCLA. So like I think it's very important to keep Unamba like engaged.
Yeah.
If he's going to be the odd man out, which kind of looks like he is among the transfer additions on paper. And so how do you keep him? So that's going to be interesting. It's hard to envision all three of those guys to me maybe being on the roster this summer.
Well, and then conversely though, or just push Jagger out, you know?
Farmer or
whoever, yeah. I had to giggle because Cheeseball said in the chat, "Spit my drink out when Luckett said his wife's show was Hitler Docs."
It's the truth.
Oh man,
God bless her.
I got a good.
She's gonna get a kick out of. She's gonna get a kick out of this when she finds out a good chunk of this podcast was.
You know what?
Talking about her TV viewing habits.
In our off season, we just need to turn this into the complain about our wives.
What other college football podcast is talking about Vanderpump Rules?
Oh man, it is funny how you get to this point in the year and just seeing like what people are talking about, what's sticking, what's hitting from a national perspective. I stopped in my tracks when I saw the On3 graphic that was Cam Newton says that Jerry Jones is tanking for Arch Manning and to hire Nick Saban. I was just like, man, you hit all the words there, Cam Newton. Like that was just who are the most top search names in football? Let's put them all in one sentence and see what we get. Which I don't know where I guess I was thinking about what we're going to talk about here in a little bit. In our kind of like off-season, like silly conversations, thinking about just the best players I've seen. And it's like, how is that the same guy that I'm watching on TV with this doofy ass hat on? Like, who is this cartoon character and what did he do with that football player? Like, the stuff he wears on television, he looks like he's leading a safari expedition to go try to find some
Yeah.
endangered species in the Amazon.
Yeah, but I saw them try to fight him at that 7-on-7 tournament, and he flipped that switch real quick.
Well, I'm sure you saw him jump on the moving helicopter too, right? On that TV
Yeah.
show. I mean,
Yeah.
it's still down in there, but I just the cartoon character that he is as a personality is just I'll never. It's telling that to somebody in 2012, like, you want to see what Cam Newton looks like in the future? You're like, dude, stop. Like, what? Get out of here. That is not Cam Newton. You wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe that that's the same person.
Yeah. And it also, like, his career was just, I mean, he was but like 10 years NFL.
Yeah, and it was like 6 really good. But you know how it is with a lot of those guys, which that's why if you're the Ravens, you probably got some little anxiety. I know he hasn't gotten you to a Super Bowl like Cam got them, but I mean, Lamar's been better to this point. I don't.
Yeah, yes.
You know, and he doesn't use his body the way that Cam did. Cam would like bully people with his size.
Cam had probably one MVP year, maybe 2, and Lamar, I would say, has had 3. But yeah, I mean, putting your body on the line, it's similar how they play. But yeah, I would agree.
To slightly change the subject while we're on the NFL, how much have you had the NFL Network on during their week-long coverage of the Senior Bowl down in Mobile? How much have you taken in? How much have you watched?
I don't watch that really anymore because I've watched it in the past and you really don't get much of anything out of it. I've been kind of just taking it in through reporting and people on the scene and seeing what's going on Twitter and all that. That's kind of how I consume the event now.
Yeah.
And now, Nick, I don't know if you're seeing this, but like, dudes are opting out of the Senior Bowl. Like, they'll go to practice and opt out, and it's just like, well, I'm not even going to waste my time to watch this game on Saturday because they're not even playing. Like,
is that what they're doing? They're just doing the practices and they're not playing in the game?
It's like as soon as they get enough good feedback, they stop. It's like what we see at the combine now.
Yeah.
You run a 40 and you're just like, all right,
got my time. I'm good.
Come to my pro day and I'll do verts or whatever, or the short shuttle, whatever.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing some of that. And there's been a lot of players who've just opted out. I've seen some people say that both Deion Walker and Maxwell Hairston have, but that has not been confirmed yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but typically that's either 1, they're hurt, 2, things aren't going well, or 3, they've done what they needed to do. So it's one of those 3, and you won't know unless you're, like, I think, locked in there on that.
Max has done pretty well, but it is funny to see some of the I just love the clips where they're like, oh, what a great rep. And I'm like, is it? I mean, he played good defense, but it was just a terribly thrown ball that the dude he's guarding had no chance of catching,
Yeah. I believe it was Willie or maybe it wasn't against Willie Lampkin. It was against some undersized center. And it was a run drill. And someone said Deion Walker didn't win it, but it was like kind of like, well, he kind of did. Maybe he didn't win it, but at best for the offensive line, it was a stalemate.
Yeah.
There's
been a couple of very funny Deion images of him just like destroying people.
Running over that poor older gentleman holding the shield dummy.
Oh God, that guy didn't stand a chance. It's also one of those things too, where for a lot of all Deion needed to do is just to show up and stand there and get measured, because, I mean, he's like 99th percentile of all of the things.
Just seeing him in his jersey, he looks like he's cut some pounds, I would say.
Yeah, 340 is good weight for him.
Yeah, so he's been working for this.
So they'll do. We'll have more. We'll make next week more of a kind of get our head wrapped around it, because practices are still happening today. There's still more ongoing down in Mobile. But then the part that I like out of all of it is I feel like a lot of these draft things, it's you get together and you watch them, but you almost passively watch them. And a lot of this stuff is just talking to other people about the players and what they think about it, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm curious what these sort of intel and the talking points will be next week. I think the early one is that the quarterbacks stink outside of the top two.
And if you watch the Giants front office Hard Knocks, the Brian Burns trade was created at Senior Bowl. The Giants GM and the Panthers GM, Joe Shane and Dan Morgan, they showed them talking on, like while watching practice, about interest level in this or that, and then that trade was executed a few weeks later. So there's some of that. It's a lot of networking, but yeah, you're right. Talking to people, what are you hearing? What are they hearing? Yada yada yada. But this is really the only event where you get to see these guys doing football activities.
Yeah, even if they are just one-on-one.
real football activity with pads on, like
right.
Translatable things. It's not the underwear Olympics that
exactly
you would see up in the combine or at pro day.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really their value there, and you can just see them against NFL bodies and what that looks like and compare it to the tape.
If you want to watch a real football game tonight, the Shrine game is happening, and Pop Dumas Johnson's playing in it. Is that on NFL Network?
Yes, 8:00 NFL Network, Shrine Bowl.
He had a nice pick six during the drills, and some of those guys. Devin Leary, he got taken in the draft from the Shrine game. It's a little different with quarterbacks, obviously. But
the Shrine Bowl they've gotten better rosters. I think part of that is the Senior Bowl being able to have juniors.
Yeah, so they're taking up some of the spaces for the old guys.
Yes.
So it's been better in the last 2-3 years. If you want to go watch Pop Dumas Johnson run around in a UK helmet tonight at 8 on the NFL Network. Let's take a couple questions before we get to some of the fun stuff to wrap up the show. Blind Squirrel, how would you rate Brock Vandergriff's one season in the Bluegrass State? Look, I guess that happened. The article came out on Monday that he's in medical sales now. He's slinging some medical devices. I know people who have gotten into that, and there's very good money in that. So
competitive. It's very competitive, but yeah.
So he is giving that a swing, also doing a little work on the farm. And you get that sometimes, I'm just ready to move on. You've heard it sometimes, but it's rarely from a quarterback, right? Like normally it's the fifth-year redshirt offensive lineman who's on his second knee surgery, and he's just like, all right, I'm done with this. You rarely get it from the quarterback. In the article, I felt like his dad might have been like a little begrudgingly, I'm happy for him, but, he could have toughened it up, sort of deal. But Brock sounds content with his decision. I don't know about you. Like, I thought the most newsworthy part was just that Stoops wanted him back. It's like, oh, huh.
Well, I think seeing that and then going back to the end season, the decision to go back to Brock.
Mm-hmm.
The Tennessee game after they bench him against Auburn, gets hurt in the Tennessee game, and then letting him play against Murray coming off a week where he did not practice. So I think that adds up. That plays out. Again, going back to this time last year, back in the summer, it was a 2-year thing with Brock Vandergriff, riding this 2-year string out with him and not having to go in the portal and spend money on a quarterback after investing in Vandergriff. I think that's what they wanted to do. It didn't play out that way. I think it just had the feel of he's a Georgia Bulldog, and he didn't want to not be a Georgia Bulldog. And so he's ready to close that chapter of his career and just move back to Georgia. And he's probably will get season tickets to Georgia football this year. And he'll get to go and tailgate, and he'll be listening to Georgia 11 personnel.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason, too, why Stoops just really wanted to put all of his chips in with Brock, too, is because I think from an intangible standpoint, he wants players in his program like Brock Vandergriff. But as Brock said plenty of times, it was almost like the fire just wasn't there anymore. And it's hard to be, especially when he's a quieter guy, not the most naturally vocal guy. So like to really have to bring it, you gotta have that fire, and it wasn't lit for him.
Yeah, I mean, he left the place he grew up like wanting to go to and cheered for. He went to play for a coordinator who left on him.
Yep.
He comes to a organization thinking he's getting one thing, and I think he didn't get that.
Yep.
Like I think thought he was coming to an organization similar to Georgia, and like I think he mentioned in there like Kirby Smart kind of
helped him get there. Yeah.
So I think he thought he was getting something very similar to Georgia, and that ended up not playing out. Mm-mm. Kentucky, as it's been reported, the culture was an issue inside the locker room last year. Player leadership seems like an issue, and so they just had a really rough season, and things went really sideways on them. And I think it was probably not the most enjoyable experience for him. So, did he want to run that back again, or did he want to go to this job he had lined up? And I think that's the decision he made. And he got beat up on top of all of that.
Yeah, the picture of James Pierce sacking him by the head. It's just like, I'd be done too.
Well, even before that, he talked about the injuries. He got the shoulder hurt, like we thought in week 1 when he ran the ball. He hurt his shoulder. He hurt his knee. Like at the Ole Miss game, he just started wearing a leg sleeve that he wasn't wearing the first few weeks. So at some point in those first couple weeks, whether it was a Georgia or Ohio game or practice, he did something to tweak his knee, and then he had the concussion against Tennessee. So on top of all the other stuff, he was banged up. So all in all, if you had to put it in a nutshell, it sounded like he just did not have an enjoyable experience in Lexington and was ready to move on.
Walker Y'all, he's got a couple questions about coaches. If you can't pick Summerall, who would be our next coach? And then he also said, do you guys believe that John Summerall, this is his dream job like some believe? I don't know about dream job, but I mean, if he would have been the coach if Stoops went to A&M, there's no doubt in my mind. And if the timing works out again, like the timing didn't work out for Jeff Brom when they hired Satterfield, right? Like that, he had just gotten to Purdue, and it was like, I can't dip that quickly,
And I think they were coming off like not a great year at Purdue too.
Yeah, and he had Rondale as a freshman, and Rondale was good, and I think that might have been when they beat Ohio State. So they might have like started to get some momentum, if I'm not mistaken.
Let's see. It was after his second year at Purdue.
Correct. So
Rondale would have been going into his junior year. Is that right?
I think it's sophomore. I think that was right after Rondale's freshman All-American season.
Yeah, you're right. That's right. Rondale,
so
he had Rondale
was
for
awesome, and they were pretty good that year with David Blau, I want to say, who's now the Lions.
Yeah, they were coming off. Yeah, he's getting interviewed for like quarterback coach jobs.
Yeah. But yeah, they were coming off a pretty good year. It was the kind of what you thought was going to be the year before the year. He wasn't going to leave. So timing's everything. So to Walker's question, if you can't pick him, look at who you picking right now. It's not a very long list. I know just familiar names around here. Will Stein comes up. I don't think he would take that. I'm fascinated by what Brian Hartline's going to do next. Like that would intrigue me, but I also don't know like what kind of value he would even have at a place like Kentucky if he can't recruit NFL draft picks at wide receiver. I mean, that's his shtick.
So first off, who's making the hire? Like, how much longer is Mitch going to be here? How much longer is Stoops going to be here? That's the thing for who's making the hire.
Well, let's not be realistic. Let's just name like some coaches out there that we like.
Yeah, Andy Koltonicki, Penn State's offensive coordinator.
That's a good one.
He's going to get a job
at Kansas. Yeah,
and I think he's got a chance to be good. So he's a guy I would have my eye on. Glenn Schumann, Georgia defensive coordinator, is a hot name. He was in the North Carolina mix.
The hiring Knowles from Ohio State at Penn State was something. I know it's not necessarily our typical Big Ten defense coordinator hires, but hiring the dude who just got that defense into shape
Yeah.
for
And
$3 million a year. Like, huh.
and the one thing I would point out, Kentucky is an SEC school. Financially, they're going to have advantages over Big 12 ACC programs. So there could be a coach that would not leave a solid Big 12 program for a mid-tier SEC school that may be seen as a lateral move, maybe even seen as a step down in some regards.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's possible. Like just Sonny Dykes.
Yeah.
He's got he's going good at TCU, but he might want to be like, let me go get this paycheck.
Yeah.
At Kentucky. Right. That is at play for I think pretty much every SEC school and a lot of Big Ten schools that they can go hire a coach like that. It's always a possibility.
Let's get Bill O'Brien in the butt chin. Get him out of New England, get that cleft down here, and then we can play on the early playoff game. Like Bill O'Brien, he's the Saturday wild card special. He can get Kentucky in the Saturday wild card special in the college football playoff instead of the NFL playoff.
Yeah, like Brent Key is a name to watch. Like he retained both his two coordinators. He's got Haynes King back. They've been good the first 2 years. They're recruiting well. They just had a good portal class. They got some actual like dudes out of Atlanta recruiting wise. He's a guy, perfect example. Like Georgia Tech's just not going to be able to afford him. So some mid tier Big Ten or SEC school could pluck him away. That I'm not saying, but I think that's a possibility for all of these schools moving forward. And I put Kentucky in that classification that they could go and take someone's coach because this is they got the finances to do that if they wanted to do that.
You also mentioned two private institutions where we don't even know how much they make per year. Could be a lot less, could be a lot more.
Yeah, I just thinking of guys that would kind of fit that model. And in 3 years, they could be a coach we're not even talking about right now.
Exactly. But that was a fun little exercise. I've got one more fun little exercise for us. But first, I got to tell you about our friend Andy Ludicky over at My Perfect Franchise, myperfectfranchise.net. If you're sick of your job, you want to just change things up, start a new career path, hell, maybe even a side hustle, and you can do that in the world of franchising. Andy is a franchise consultant and a franchise owner. He helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, passions, and financial requirements. His services are 100% free. He's here to help you with any questions you have about business ownership. You can own your own business. When I think of franchises, I always think of fast food restaurants, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many different types of franchise industries out there, and Andy,
car wash.
Yeah. Oh, phew. You can print some money with those bad boys. Get together with Andy. Head to myperfectfranchise.net to learn more, or you can call or text Andy at 404-973-9901. That's 404-973-9901. We got more information about Andy Ludicky and myperfectfranchise.net in the body of this post. So go check it out today, myperfectfranchise.net. Like it's going to be an off season, and we're going to have football stuff to talk about, but I'm trying to come up with a list of just silly, fun things that we can get our football minds going. It's like when you get June and there will be some Twitter thing. It's like some guys will just sit around and talk about random receivers. So I kind of want to do something like that to end these shows. We might sprinkle in a few guests here and there, but I wanted to start with the fun exercise. You can pick one player from the Brooks era, the Rich Brooks era, and add it to this Kentucky football team. We're not going to do quarterbacks because I think, you'd probably take Andre Woodson or Jared Lorenzen, just like, hey, please go win us some football games. But a guy from the Rich Brooks era that you think could be the missing piece to this 2025 Kentucky football team.
Yeah, I think you talk about Kentucky's football program. I think a lot of this offseason is about like what Mark Stoops says, I got to fix the culture. Mm-hmm. It's about like finding their soul. You got to find their soul.
I think I know where you're going.
Just go get Wesley Woodyard. He's
Yep.
the sole the energy bunny, the sole
Mhm.
generator. Like you need leaders and guys that could drag you. I think that would be you plug him in. Linebackers a question mark. You know, you
Mhm.
added Landon Watson. Depth is you've got guys, but can you develop them? I think you plug him in there. Like
I,
you get one of the best leaders I think this program has ever seen.
yeah.
Um, and so that would be my pick.
I like that selection, Mr. Luckett, especially knowing that you kind of like what you got at linebacker, the athletes, but it's almost like when they brought in Pop Dumas Johnson last year, and you're like, yeah, that he's going to be good. You know what you're going to get with Wesley Woodyard. I'm thinking more offensively because I'm stop me, but I'm if you've heard this before, but I'm worried about the Kentucky football wide receivers. And we talked a lot about wide receiver culture on this show. And if there's one person who can fix wide receiver culture, it's a hard nosed, tough SOB that's not going to drop passes, that's not afraid to go across the middle of the field, that can be an outlet for Zach Calzada. He may not be built for the game right now in this current present day and age. He might, get himself in trouble a little bit, but give me Dickie Lyons. Give me Dickie Lyons Jr., add him into the mix. You want somebody that can fix the culture. I don't think anybody's messing with that dude.
Nick, do you remember the Daily Dickie that UK used to put out?
I don't remember the Daily Dickie. Enlighten me.
So going into his last year, yeah. Now you have to remember, like this is
Early
like
internet.
yeah, this is like 2008, so it's like before Twitter.
Yeah. Early Facebook, MySpace was probably big
Yeah,
at the time. Yeah.
yeah. So like you could see videos on like these websites, and like
Maybe you.
ESPN was starting to roll out video, and then UK
Mhm.
Athletics would have video,
That
and
was
then I
probably
think they would
around
put
when they
stuff on
did the.
Facebook.
That was when they did the cribs with Patrick Patterson. I'm sure.
Yes, it would have been around that time.
Yeah.
And then the YouTube was young, but they were on YouTube. They would have the Daily Dickie. It would just be him at practice. Like, hey, this is our linebacker, whoever. He does this. And it would just be him like having a minute, like just like a quick, like little 90-second thing. And they did that all throughout camp. That was just like TikTok before TikTok. He would have just been this. I think he would have been a huge, probably potential social media star.
If he was
If
present.
yeah, right, yeah,
And like that's the we're having fun, but we're having fun with a guy like you're not going to mess around with. And I'm sure there's some people who'd be like, Rouch, why would you take Dickie Lyons over Randall Cobb? I said not a quarterback, okay? Randall Cobb, check the stats, played quarterback. So, boom, boom. What if we did this vice versa, right? A player, let's say what's a player from the Mark Stoops era? I
yeah.
mean,
Give me
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen on the
Yeah,
2007 team. It's
God.
like,
I
yeah,
mean, really, the one I still like. I've only I don't bring it up to him often, and it's been a brief conversation. But Jeremy Jarman, he friend of the program. Pardon my French. Such bullshit. I get so angry thinking about what he would have been for that team because he was so good, and he's still. I mean, I'm pretty sure Pascal broke his record, his tackle for loss record. He had this
yeah.
single season one. I mean, Jeremy was so good, and granted, he wasn't as bendy as a Josh Allen was, but man, having him on that '07 team would have
Well, he
been
was
awesome.
he was young on the '07 team. It was
Was
I
it
think the
was the
'09 team.
'09?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he missed that year.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. Because that would have
But
been
they
when
had it.
Dickey
But they had
got
a good.
hurt year too, right? Was the '09 year when Dickey got hurt?
That was '08. You're getting them all blended together.
God.
But '09 he missed. That was the team that lost to Tennessee. Finished 7-5. But if they had Jarman, they probably win one of those games. They go 8-4, maybe they go 9-3. And if that plays out, Brooks probably doesn't leave.
Yeah.
And then you have this 2010 team that you maybe could have won the East with because of how everything lined up.
Mhm.
So the whole that a lot of it looks there's a butterfly effect there if
Yeah,
that doesn't
yeah.
happen potentially.
It also when you think about those teams, their biggest issue was just they didn't have the depth to withstand injuries and having to work. I mean, because Raphael Little is a very unheralded, awesome Kentucky football player. And his numbers are great, and they would have been even better if he could stay on the field consistently. I mean, he would just play 2 games, off a game, play 2 games, off a game. Benny Snell's just workhorse ability, that doesn't get enough credit for what he did. I mean, just 3 years, he just played in every game and was just always a badass. I mean, what a guy. What a guy. It's fun, talking about some old players.
Bringing that Jarman suspension up, that's to show you just how much, and we even talked about Pearl early in the cookout stuff.
Yeah.
Like how much stuff has changed, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And his was taking stuff at GNC just to lift. Which, I mean, is even dumber it's so frustrating. Oh, man. But it's fun looking back. We'll be doing some more looking back here and there. But I thought that was a fun little exercise for us to wrap up this week's edition of 11 Personnel. Next week, the calendar's going to turn to February. We'll pay a little bit closer attention to all the stuff happening in the NFL draft world. And we're going to keep being silly with stuff like this, just talking a little ball. It's fun to scratch that football itch. We're also going to get to look ahead to the Super Bowl where the chalk did hold, Mr. Luckett. Your favorite player, your favorite quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. He just keeps being Patrick Mahomes. So another Super Bowl with that guy. 7 years. He just keeps going to AFC Championship games and playing in Super Bowls. That's what he does. He's pretty good at it.
Yep. He's just like slow playing everyone. Just messing around all regular season. What are we even doing?
It's slow playing a 15-win regular season too.
Yeah.
So, but we'll talk about that much more next week. Enjoy your college basketball Saturday. Hopefully it ends with a Kentucky victory over the Razorbacks. We'll be back next week with more 11 Personnel. For Adam Luck and I'm Nick Roush. Go Cats and go Crow Green.